welcome back one and all to the EMEA Masters 2023 Summer Main Stage Groups. I am Just Dushin. I am still joined by the notorious Nymera. And remember, we're covering, I believe, Group B, but if you want to check out Group D, you can check it out on twitch.tv/ESLOL. They are covering all the games from that. We are going back, though, straight into our group. We're going to be talking about our next game, which is going to be the Ultraliga coming up against the Prime League. And the Ultraliga, I mean, as a whole, they are not looking hot right now.
There are a couple of different things I want to balance here, because Alior Bank being here is in itself a very special story in a lot of ways, because they overcame Zero Tenacity, who are an EMEA Master mainstay. They have overcome a lot to be here, and they've done that by really adapting well, taking losses well, and figuring out how to get better from them. Problem is, you got to take those losses. And when you're in a group stage, which is only 6 best of ones, each of those losses hurts. BK Rock put them to the sword. It was not close, and Adi in particular has had some difficult moments as well, and now they're staring down the barrel of what could potentially be, 0-3 in this group. It has felt like they have themselves a very difficult situation.
Yeah, this is definitely a moment to kind of stand up and be counted, because the thing is, you take the win here, you get yourself up to 1-2, and you beat down SK Prime, then you're into a much different situation. You can force a tiebreaker in the day two. You could definitely go to a 3-3 scoreline. There's an awful lot. Hell, you can even go to 4-2 if you're able to beat Desire back. But I think, looking at how clean and crisp SK Prime were in that last game, it's a hell of a tall order to try and get it going here for the side of the Ultraliga number 2.
It turns out that SK Prime, when they're allowed to play laning phase, are very different from the team they are when they're not allowed to play laning phase. Turns out that's quite a common thing in most teams of League of Legends. Laning phase is really important. SK Prime, with that more stable early game, they really showed what they can do around objectives and around big engages as well. That's what's left us with the group here as well. So the Alior Bank sat at 0-2. BK Rock leading the group as well at 2-0.
Yeah, and the thing is, again, you have to take a win here. If you go into the day, the final day, day 4, 0-3, I mean, you're going to have to start taking scalps off everybody to try and force something. And even then, a 3-3 scoreline just might not be good enough with the way things go, so we'll have to wait and see. But, I mean, kind of focusing on the kind of the players, I suppose, that you want to see step up, is that who do you think that bit of magic's going to come from?
That is quite...
It's the question to end all questions.
I think Adi in the jungle has had a couple of rough starts. I'm going to start there, because I don't think it... And this is going to be a team-wide thing as well. If your jungle is getting invaded level 1 by a top laner, it's not necessarily the jungler's fault all the time. Sometimes it's actually about the top laner getting vision of the top laner walking down, standing down at that buff so they don't get walked in on. There's a lot of team play which needs to work here, particularly in the early game, because what we have seen is that from this team regionally, they are incredibly good at team fighting. Problem is, everyone's a good team fighting team here at the EMEA Masters. That's not going to fly for free. You need to give yourself as best a shot to work towards those team fights as possible. That starts by being coordinated in the early game to make sure that you don't have someone left out to dry.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing, is that the fact that they're leaving, kind of, again, people just kind of sorting themselves out. It just feel very disconnected a lot of the time. But on the side of SK Prime, I'm extremely excited to say that they have bounced back fantastically in that second game of the day. Yes, they did lose to BK Rogue a little bit hard, I'm not going to lie. That's just kind of how it is. But they didn't let that phase them, and they came back much, much stronger. And they do look like another contender who should be pushing for finals in this competition.
This roster has done an awful lot in the Prime League. Yes, they were kind of always the bridesmaids, not the bride, until this split, but they were immaculate through the Prime League in summer. It felt like with the departure of Peach from Unicorns of Love, that was kind of like the last team out of the way from them so they could walk towards that title for them. It does raise a couple of questions about how do you walk away from a loss in a split where you found so much success. There's a lot of mentality towards that. I think that's where the veterancy really comes in from these players. That you have a lot of players which have seen play up towards the LEC and EU LCS before. You've seen plays across the ERLs for a great many years. It gives them that extra ability to take those L's and just roll with the punches.
Yeah, that's the big thing. You got to be able to roll with them and such. And again, this is a bit of a kind of a litmus test to see what Alior Bank can do, see what they can actually kind of set up here, because right now they are in the trenches. They are kind of down and dirty with it, and they need to make sure they come out of that alive. But we'll see how it all ends up going right now. We are going to see the couple of top lane bans. This could have been a trend I'm noticing against SK Prime, is that you got to focus out the laners, focus out the solo lanes, make sure that they don't have as easy a time as everyone else would think they would.
And the Ivern as well. Turns out if a team plays Ivern, just ban it, because it's really hard to prepare against. It's the only champion which really does exactly what he does. We have a lot of power picks which are going to make it through the draft now in terms of like wider League of Legends. You have stuff like Jace, which is very powerful, Azir, Tristana. It feels like those three have been the strongest mid laners for a little while now because they can push so easily. The Tristana is the best pushing mid laner in the game. With that gone, you feel happier playing either the Jace or the Azir. One of the two. It's absolutely fine playing either of them at that point. It wouldn't surprise me to see many pick up one of those mid laners at that point, and because I think what we've seen on the side of SK Prime is that if you hold down Febiven and he kind of just gets crushed in lane by a pushing lane, he really does start to become a bit of a black hole of pressure for that team. His team don't bail him out that easily. I think that's why they last banned that Azir, actually. They don't want to give just the easy pushing lane. Yeah,
they kind of take away that from the side of Alior Bank, but we'll see what they want to try and confirm here. We'll say the Kalista has been left open, something we did see banned away by Kedaway in the last one. I'd say he has played it 7 times so far in 2023 summer, so yeah, it's not his most played, funny enough, but it is definitely something he has a hell of a lot of practice on. I believe he's 21-6 on the champion historically, and I think 6-1 so far in summer splits, so again, just kind of a big kind of, power pick for the side of SK Prime, should they want to lean that way.
Ooh, are we going to get Maokai Jace from the side of SK Prime? That is typically one of the strongest mid-jungles you can lock in. It's a Febiven champion as well. Lorix always hovers this. He's not locking in a Shaker. Funnily enough, it was Detonation Focus Me that would play LeBlanc Shaco, which was really funny because like Shaco would like walk in, go invis, and then just stride breaker someone for a 90% slow, and then just someone would hop over all and one-shot them. Wonderful times, completely irrelevant here. We're expecting something like that Jace to come through alongside that Maokai. It gives you the AP-AD split in terms of damage between the two champions. I don't like this. I don't like locking in the double AP. This means that you are incentivizing Merc Treads. Yes, Febiven is a great player of the champion, but as two champions, it feels like they're not really on the same page. You don't really get to play as fast as the LeBlanc wants to as the Maokai, and the LeBlanc struggles to play as slow as the Maokai wants to as well. You can 1-3-1. We'll see if SK Prime go towards that. But that's a bit of an odd duo to lock in for mid-jungle.
Bit of an odd one, but that's not an odd couple. It's definitely going to be the Sejuani Jace combination. Yep. They even get the Rel, so you get the Cavalier, the Cavalry even coming in here and just kind of, setting everything off and as they run into battle. But for SK Prime, see what they want to try to round this one out with now, because they know where this support's going to be going.
Do you think a cavalry composition is stable?
Kalista gets itself locked in. I'm ignoring it. I'm ignoring what you just said, okay? I also need a time check on when Nymera brought up the LGL, but you weren't even on day one. This is only 2 games in on day 2. But anyway, they get the Kalista. We mentioned how good and how much of a power point this can be, but it does mean that you are looking at early spiking power in that bot side here for SK Prime.
Yeah, maybe this is... So what papers over the cracks of maybe champions would work on a little bit of a different tempo from each other, where, the LeBlanc always wants to be jumping in and controlling waves and poking people down. Maokai plays a bit slower. If you have really strong lanes, it doesn't matter. Something like that Jace can take bad trades against the LeBlanc. Something like a Kalista always takes good trades against you in bot lane because it's a Kalista. The problem is what happens once you take one bad trade. If you mess up one trade, then things start to fall behind. We haven't seen any bot lane champions locked in just yet, of course, so, or rather, we haven't seen it for the side of Svensson inside. You have the Rel down towards that support. You're expecting something which could, well, I mean, actually, Rel can pair up with pretty much anything at that point. Rel struggles into something like Kalista because if you ever miss your engage, you get absolutely pin-cushioned and you immediately die. So you have 2 choices. Either you just scale up and you play safe in that bot side and just try and play things slow, or you all in with something like a Samira. I don't know if you want to do that against the likes of Kedria and Prime, though, so I'd imagine it's going to be scale up and I'd just try and play things slow. But if you're doing that in mid lane with the Jace, doing that in bot lane as well against a Blitzcrank too, I feel like you're just going to be an absolute sitting duck for this early game.
I want the combination of a Blitzcrank hook into the Kalista ultimate to bring you back. That's what I want to see.
Oh, the Ballista?
The Ballista,
yes. I forgot about that.
The Ballista ultimate. We'll see. We'll see. I will be keeping a very very keen eye on whether or not that does end up happening. But obviously keeping Gen X the counter pick towards the top side, even got rid of something like the Renekton to make sure that they don't get super overpowered in that lane. But you still got yourself a Jax for Matix, so definitely feeling a little bit confident to try and say, look, I've got the Rel, I've got plenty of things I can, or sorry, not the Rel, the Sejuani, I could definitely set up for ganks in that mid game.
So you got double melee synergy for Alior on the Sejuani, and we asked for him to be supported by his team a bit more. It does feel like top side early strength to the side of Alior Bank, and then really bot side dominance from the side of SK Prime on the other side. Now, what are you going to go towards this? Are we going to go for basically a handshake and say, we're going to try and snowball top side from Alior Bank, we're going to try and snowball bot side from SK Prime? You see the hovers right now coming in from Gen X. It's not about fighting the Jax Sejuani, it's very hard to do that. Maybe you can lock in something like a Gragas or a Cassante and say, we're just going to be undiveable. Something like the Scion also helps towards that regard, but I feel like that matchup can get out of control if Jax gets some control. Very much prefer that Cassante. You're undiveable, it's very hard to pull off that Jax Sejuani combination now.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, just gives you, you know you're playing weak side now as Gen X. You know you're not going to be the priority considering it is a Blitz Kalista in that bot lane. So plenty of ways for the side of the Ezreal and the Rel to get out of that. But it is definitely going to be the focus from the side of SK Prime to try and get those dragon stacking, get those fights in those early to mid games. And as you say, look to try and snowball from there. But I will say that for Alior Bank, they've got themselves a fairly decent competition. If this can get to that 20-minute mark with an item, maybe an item and a half in the pocket of everybody, this is a strong, beefy side that the Kalista is going to struggle to get through.
And I think that really means that SK Prime, they have locked in a composition that needs to land really a Blitzcrank hook or get a significant laning lead in bot lane one way or another between like levels 1 to 3. If you don't explode this bot side, and maybe that can be helped by LeBlanc winning lane and then roaming down as well, there are multiple options for this. But if the line is SK Prime's composition is not as cohesive as Alior Bank's on the other side, they need to win early game to overcome that.
Yeah, that's the big thing. They have to overcome that mountain or that hill, depending on how the early game goes, before they can really get themselves to the promised land. But, I mean, look, again, I think this is good from the side of SK Prime. They're showing us something completely different to what they did last game. They're giving us more options and, again, more things that need to be thought about when teams go up against them in the second phase of this round robin. So, excited to see what they can do. But I do think that Alior Bank have got themselves all the tools available to them to survive, to get themselves. Yes, you might fall behind in that bot lane. It's not really that big of a deal. You have an Ezreal, he will scale. So I do believe that if they play this smart and they play this slowly, this could be a game that the side of the Polish Ultraliga number 2 seed can come back and win.
And the problem is, losing lane gracefully is a very difficult art form, particularly when we've been in a meta so far that has felt like, for the longest time, AD carries when they're ahead just win the game. Kalista last year in spring was so meta. You had Kalista, Renata, and they do two things. They kill you in lane, they kill you under turret, or they kill your jungler in your own side of the jungle. If you lose lane without chunking out the Blitzcrank and the Kalista, or without the ability to respond to an invade, it might get a little bit more spicy, particularly around that enemy jungle, than Addy is prepared for.
You can see already an early ward down the bottom right, just to make sure that there's no
yes, they have suffered the Blitzcrank level 1 before.
Just in case.
That is the ward of a survivor, or perhaps a previous
I was going to say death in a previous life. We'll see Lorax getting pushed back here as Addy and Matix just make their presence known. And again, just good kind of early pushing here. And again, what I always say about junglers in the early stages, if you know where they are, their impact is significantly mitigated in the first 5 minutes if you know exactly where they are. Even if they don't go for something, the fact that you have that information gives you so much freedom.
And what can bail them out from that is if lanes just win super hard, that actually doesn't matter where you know the jungler is, that you can't do anything about it. So now we have to see if Kedri can give that information over to, well, rather give that leg up to Lurox, even though they're likely to be spotted on the top side as well. See that this bot lane, I think everyone knows that this one's got some volatility into it. If you do get a hook onto that Rel, it's okay when they have the shield up, I suppose, but if you get a hook onto someone important, you take a big trade at level 2, that's when things really start to fall apart.
Yes, gotta be careful, just outside of the range of the turret, but taking a hell of a lot of damage. No flash being burned just yet. Kedaway using that martial pose just perfectly to keep him pushing up, putting in spears into the back of that Ezreal.
That's already very bad. That's
Yes.
not just a chunk onto the support, it's a summoner down. Yes, they have the Hex Flash, sure, they can use that for aggressive plays. Not the same to be able to escape situations as well. Now if Prime flashes forward onto the Rel, they're pretty much dead. Alongside that, you burn the pot from that Rel, very dangerous at that point. So Prime League, the representatives, their champions have themselves a strong start towards that bot side.
But I will say, with that information, you can see immediately Lorax walks onto a ward. Immediately, Matix and Manny, or Many, excuse me, do they go start getting a very...
I had this as well.
Is
When
it
I was
Manny
reading
or
his
Many?
I'm pretty sure it's Many. But the thing is, when you read someone's name, you just kind of forget that, you know, words and languages exist. But then you also have to consider, okay, but where are they from? What languages do they speak? I had this problem, like, I mean, it did say this problem, but like, things are, different letters are pronounced differently in different languages. Back onto the screen, of course, we see that the bot lane advantage means that Adi needs to protect his own jungle. It does get the buff at least. But I had this problem as well. I was like, is it Manny or Many? I'm going with Many for now.
It's like when you type a curse word and it changes to ducking. I forgot for a very long time that ducking was a thing you did, not just...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
If you ever forget it, Sivir reminds you. Better duck.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I just thought of ducks and then duckings, and I was just like, oh my god. And I think I saw it playing a meme or something like that. I was like, oh my lord, am I really being educated that ducking is an actual word? But yeah, the more you know, the more you kind of set up here.
The more you know.
The more you know, yeah. And whatever that tune is, I don't know what it is. Anyway, coming right back into the game, I do think it was nice to see the kind of, you know, SK Prime utilizing the priority they had in the bot lane. We even saw them kind of go for something. They didn't gain anything from it, but it's kind of one of those, like, you lose nothing, but you can gain something from it, so might as well try kind of situations.
Right? Yeah. And the thing is, like, the bad start was obviously losing so much HP, and then, of course, the summoner on Mini Mashek as well, who's been so important to the side of Alior Bank as well. He's done a lot of good work for this team in regards to their team fighting potential later into the game. The problem is with the Kalista is that you really do want to get plates, you really do want to get a farm advantage. That hasn't really led to anything yet. You didn't manage to steal the camps through on the enemy jungle. You didn't manage to get a dive off. You didn't manage to get a kill or zone off CS. So the first 3 levels of the game, which are often what you judge a Kalista game by, haven't done that much just yet, especially alongside a Blitzcrank, which is looking for very similar advantages.
Level 5's just being hit, but Adi, let's see if he can catch out Gen X, who does have flash available to him. Going to be able to get a lot of this kind of taken up on top of him. Will dash forward and get the CC down, taking a little bit more aggressively because he knows that that tower is doing some decent work for him. And that's not too bad of a situation to be in. Does lose his flash, but won't lose this wave, so that's kind of not the worst situation to be in.
I was surprised that he didn't have W there. That's probably why they went for that play, actually. If you have the W, it makes it so hard for the Jax Sejuani to land any significant damage onto the Xante. Just buffs through the CC, gets under turret, it's the extra dash away, which definitely helps. So, while all this is said, you know, Gen X is at a farm lead in this top lane against the Jax Sejuani. So, actually, both teams with their strong sides of the map not making the most of it. Lurks in this mid lane. Manny's probably going to blow flash.
Yeah, you can't flash away, though, from the big old Twisted Tree. He is going to be able to confirm that kill with his mid laner Forbidden, getting himself up to level 6 as well. So what ends up being a positive start for the side of Alior Bank, because it ends up being, unfortunately, the kind of snowball starting in that mid lane.
Let's see which replay we get. It is the one of this mid lane. It's fairly simple. Many just misreads where Lurks is on the map. Maybe thinks that Lurks is going towards bot side because the Ezreal and the Rel are pushing up, but he's the one who's targeted this time. Doesn't flash early enough. It's sometimes it feels bad blowing flash for nothing, but I think in that case you just have to. Goes down for the attempt.
We're starting to see some CS leads kind of building up throughout the lanes right now because Lorax has kind of been very active around the map, not really picking up his farm. He's happy to go behind 2-3 camps. It's not a big deal. However, this might be a big deal. They go aggressively here.
Does he feel flash over the wall?
He failed the Q! He failed the Q, and that means Kedoe knows that he's going to be able to flash away and keep himself going. They can get a hook in as well if they really wanted to. But I mean, they've got Lorax coming back down. All these spears being put in the back of this Rel. Should be able to remount, flash forward, gets himself his man. And that is the power of the Blitzcrank. All it takes is one hook. But man, Adi, that Q is tragic.
I think it's fair to say Adi has had a pretty bad day so far. Had some awkward early games, getting invaded early on. Not necessarily his fault in this one, but that one right there. I don't know whether he just doubted himself and said, I'm going to flash Q over the wall. You can see the direction of the Q. Maybe thought that he would flash and then Q afterwards and then just, I don't know, bailed out last second. Maybe didn't trust himself to do so, but then walks through turret anyway. Gonna see that all in...
Observers, oh my lord!
In great
He's
detail,
already dead!
I think what happened is he wanted to flash Q, but then just hesitated, didn't trust himself, and then just ended up queuing, didn't press that flash key, and then, of course, gets punished for it.
Oh, that's a bit of a rough one there as well, especially when your team was the one looking to be aggressive. It's kind of, it almost feels twice as harsh to kind of, you know, give such criticism to it because they're being proactive, but that is just the way things go right now. Prime moving over to make sure Adi doesn't just get his own way around this map and making sure he covers as much of the jungle as he possibly can for Lorax, which I love to see. A bit of support love for their junglers as they know that neither of them's getting any gold past the 10-minute mark. And it's true.
They changed buffs, so if the jungler kills them, you still get the buff afterwards. That was really huge for junglers.
That was
it meant
huge
that they
for
didn't
junglers.
lose out on buff XP for the rest of the game.
I also like how you can share it, but only the jungler can share it because it's like I get it, and even if someone else takes it, I still get it. It's literally Daddy Riot saying, "Hey, treat your brother well. You can't steal his stuff." Come on now, leave him alone. But anyway, speaking of stealing the stuff, no one going to be stealing the stuff of the Rift Herald.
So actually, we're not speaking of stealing their stuff.
We are. We're speaking of the not happening of it. That's
speaking of the
works.
negative.
Yeah,
I feel like you misled me there. I feel like this is misinformation.
That's welcome to 2023. I don't know. We're getting very weirdly off topic, but obviously, kind of seeing topside. Does he want to go aggressive into this? He now sees that Adi is here with an ultimate available, would make it difficult to kind of go for, but he doesn't even need to right now because he knows he can get the 1v1 and can dash away. Lorax is coming in as well. Oh, that knockback could have been huge. Will not be able to get the ultimate off of it, but Genax taking a 1v2 and coming out with the win.
I mean, just Cassante thinks, just Genax thinks he's playing up against the Jax Sejuani. That can often be a difficult situation to be in, but he's absolutely running through the top side of the map, which was meant to be the strong side of the map for Alior Bank. Not only have they fallen behind in bot lane, but top side as well. They need to really rack their brains to find a way to get into the game sooner rather than later.
Oh, another good hook.
That's not how you do it.
I mean, they're going to try and make this one work for them now because they're going to fully commit onto it. Manny is around, and they are starting to put down work and damage. They're going to see the Fate's Call just to protect Prime. They knew they went a little bit too deep on that particular play as Manny was there, but it ends up being a one-for-one trade. So finally, Alior Bank get himself on the map.
All right, so Manny gets down towards that bot side, helps out with the not quite semi-global of the Shock Blast. That is something on the board at least. Problem is, the follow-up to this play is that you're still losing plates. You still lost something in mid lane as well. And Febiven blows a heal on bot side and very nearly gets the heal. He has flash. You could genuinely go for a flash Q here.
He might look for it. He's waiting for cooldowns to come down. Does have the static as well. Seeing if he can maybe go for a flash. Is in. Doesn't have the Q damage. You baited him, Nightmare. You baited him with your false information about what he could do.
2023, baby. Misinformation is our game. Febiven has static shift first. It doesn't give you AP. You'd think that if you had a Ludens or you had anything else, that would be a kill. But this is New LeBlanc. Doesn't have the extra damage to put it on top of that Sigil of Malice. Where are we going back to? We're not even seeing the interesting fight before. The observers are on a mission today, and that is to make our players feel quite sad about their players. Caught in 4K. Ooh, it's pretty. Ooh, it's dead.
Yeah. Hey, if we're gonna condemn Adi for a mistake, we're gonna highlight it when he gets to
Equality. Yes, I love it.
We're gonna highlight it when he's able to kind of make something work. So I am in full support of our observers pushing that particular narrative, but. And look, it's 6 kills in 11 minutes, not the most bloodthirsty I've ever seen, but it has been action-packed. We're seeing a lot of plays around the map, kind of forcing the to and froing, the push and pull that is the game, and small little advantages happening either side.
It is, however, benefiting SK Prime. I don't think you can really say anything else. Maybe this Kalista isn't as, even with the almost 1,000 gold lead, isn't as far as ahead as you'd like a Kalista to be. We know how out of hand that lane can get in so many different situations. But as you can see, the Ezreal's still farming. They haven't lost a huge amount of plates on this bot side. And with a Herald in infantry, you can feel that Adi maybe looking for the play. Here it is.
Yeah, Kedowi trying to see if he can flash away from this one here. He will dodge away from the True Shot Barrage. It's going to be both top laners TPing on top of this one here. Immediately this Febiven as well, so with a double TP on the back of it, Kedowi still kiting it back with the martial pose, dipping and diving and dodging and ducking and looking to try and make another kill happen. It ends up being a one for none. Now Manny Maybe want to flash forward onto Lorax, not quite able to make it work there, but now they're still pushing forward onto this one. They're seeing if they can get more and more off of this play. It's not a dive over until we're finished with it. No, do not decide when we are done. Finally, they look to try and secure that final kill. They will be able to get it. Prime scurries himself away. And that is going to be plates, it's going to be kills, it's going to be all the gold in the world, and that's going to be SK Prime with a big advantage.
I think we sent the psychic message to SK Prime. We said that bot side wasn't far enough ahead. Really, they are now. They managed to just call the play. This is engaging beyond the minion wave. You can teleport on the minions beyond this point. It's beyond that 10-minute mark, and they respond so quickly to SK Prime. If you get a clean kill at first, maybe you can retreat, but they overstay a little too much. And Matix as well, kind of stuck in this awkward moment as a Jax where you can't just 1v9 at this point far too early into the game. Doesn't manage to stick around the fight, and on the retreat, these champions just don't have the ability to stay safe.
I will say, this Kedowi having some crazy good movement here on the Kalista, and again, proving why you can't really just, without having a proper game plan how to deal with this, how you're going to actually lead this one through, because he's just too clean on it.
That's why he's known as the Prince of Prime League. He used to be known as the King of Prime League. I don't really know why they stopped calling him that, but he's the Prince
Someone
right
became
now.
his daddy. That's what happened. Someone, if I know League of Legends, right? Someone is saying he's his father. Someone
became in the top lane.
Yeah,
Hi.
someone became his father. That's what happened.
I don't know. I think he's looking very calm and collected towards the spot side as well. He's looking so poised, really. In the last game with the Kai'Sa, made absolute mincemeat as soon as he got that gold value starting to stack up, and Prince of Prime League, well, he's looking mighty royal on the Kalista again.
I mean, look, it's so hard to try and deal with this now as the Ezreal. You're still trying to build up towards that Triforce. It always sucks when you're building towards that Triforce and you're just you have the components and you're just trying to figure out when you can actually go back and make it that big item, but not to be for the moment. We'll see Lorax just kind of taking away this dragon for free. Went down to 1 HP, very much a close affair, but 14 minutes onto the clock, we do see the plates going down. It wasn't too bad for the side of the Ultra League at number 2, but I mean, look, they're trying to go for this one here, taking so much damage. They're gonna have to try and catch away from all this. Oh, the Ezreal gets rooted. They don't have themselves a hook just yet. They've lost the minion wave as well, but now they've got Vivid trying to come in. Not quite able to land all the damage he wants, but again, just slowly but surely tipping down all this health. It just makes it impossible to defend.
It does, and this would be okay for Alior if they were winning on the other side of the map and they had something like the Jax hitting a turret as SK threw all of their resources down bot side. As you can see, plainly not the case. 1.8k individual lead for Genax in that top side. He's using his demolish on the turret as well. He's nearly taken a solo turret towards top side. So even though they survive bot side and they don't give up kills, I mean, you're not winning through this.
No, you are not. Matix, I was going to say, you might want to be careful here, bud. You're not really in a position to take that fight. Speaking of taking a fight, they're looking to try and catch out Vevi, who is just going to be able to flash away, then distort. Nine Storm already gets used. He even stays for a little bit of extra damage. Now Lorax jumps in. They're going to hook him. Welcome to the bounce house. Ezreal not able to get himself the kill back. And oh my days, that has got a sting there for the side of the Alior.
They have really tried to bite back at SK Prime, but really at this point in the game, this early on with a 5k advantage to their opponents, those outplays which are measured in hundreds of HP just don't go your way, and this is going to lead into a herald for the side of SK Prime. They just took 2 turrets on the top side of the map. This is disastrous for Alior. You are never going to get yourself into a point where you can safely approach objectives at this point. SK Prime have chokeholded the map.
Rel trying to see if he can maybe go for a 1v3. Vivid tries to go forward on this, eventually gets shut down.
They get him this time.
They just about get him this time, but now he has the Ludens, and that's when he's starting to hurt.
Yeah, he is. Next time you try that, he is most definitely taking you down with him. I couldn't do it this time, but still, it's a larger... And this is the difference, right? Because last time we were talking about bot side of the map where Alior couldn't cross map because they didn't have a winning lane. When Featherman dies, you can still see that they're winning the map. As you see, man, he's probably just dead to rights here.
I mean, yeah, he's dead. There's nothing else to it. He didn't get to flash. He didn't get to walk away.
If only there were like a paragraph of different sentences which would come
If only a really high-level pro player could explain to me what Cassante does, but in a very...
I just don't understand. I really feel like this could be very communicative in something like a spammable chat.
Yeah, maybe. don't know if the EMEA Masters chat or admins would appreciate us asking people to spam something. I know as modding sometimes it can be a bit frustrating when you're trying to get some stuff going, but look, regardless, 3 to 9. 5,000 gold, nearly 6,000 gold, 2 dragons. It's going to be a Chem Soul. I don't think it's going to matter, to be perfectly honest. You can see they're just kind of pushing in all the lanes, constantly getting in all the damage. They're going to drop down Shirley, Shelly's estranged sister. She's going to get to do her favorite thing in the world, bonk her head on the turret.
Yeah, Demolition at its finest. Featherman pushing in towards that top side with those 2 items, ready to respond. LeBlanc at this point in the game, with that W maxed out, can so quickly reach these fights. See that? They're trying to maybe look for an engage, but they don't have the Sejuani ult, so it's very hard to land that kind of play. It feels like all of the options available to our Ultra Liga team in this game are just very, very unsatisfying for them.
Yeah, it is an Ultra Liga. It is not an Ultra Liga teamed party right now. PG Nat's definitely feeling a little bit better about their setup right now. But I mean, look, it's how it goes sometimes. Sometimes you get a good patch, sometimes it's not. Sometimes teams are just better. And honestly, I talked about this a little bit with Dagda yesterday, that it does feel like it's a testament to how insanely stacked the EMEA Masters has become in the last few years. Like, it did kind of start off with like, all right, here's your 2 teams. That's kind of it, really. There's only one, and we're not really going to talk about it. Now it's becoming with the TCL being added in. Of course, you've got the Arabian League as well. There is a lot of different teams coming into this. We're kind of going, okay, well, hang on. Can you get away with just being a mediocre team? No, you can't.
And we haven't found ourselves in a situation where previously it felt like it was LFL versus the rest of the ERLs, and that was just the case of it, right? Karmine Corp won every single EMEA Masters that they were involved in. Now they're here again. We'll see if they can bring back some of that era for themselves. We were wondering whether the same would happen with TCL, actually, coming in from being a Worlds qualifying region to then coming into ERLs. And yes, they did win, but they haven't won across the board. Not all of their teams have had that same success. SK Prime finding some success in the mid lane as well.
They're trying to. They're going to see if they can maybe throw that Fate's Call back into 3 people. Yep, they will get it, but I don't know if they've got the damage to kind of follow up afterwards. Fabibin jumps in and immediately realizes he wants to jump himself back out. Genax, he gets him duked out with the clone, but he's in the wrong side of the rift. And this is just going to be a little bit of a trade back right now. 1 for 1, but the double knockback from the Cassante, who has joined the party, means that you cannot run away. You cannot get out of this alive, and you will be punished because Cassante is dumb, and Cassante is here to make your lives miserable. You can see Matix trying his hardest, but the ace is all but inevitable. SK Prime in less than 20 minutes looking to take complete control.
And it's alongside that 2015 champion of the Kalista as well. We don't see it all that often in this season, but Kedri bringing out one of his classics and really using the power spike you get at that 1 to 2 item mark. Yeah, you fall off. Doesn't matter when you get these extended fights this early into the game, though. Once again, it has felt like we've had one of these plays where we've seen it a couple of times today where the team that's behind try and just take down the first target. But even if they were to do that, it's not the player with the most damage. You're not taking down the Kalista, and in this case, you're not taking down the Cassette either, who, despite being attacked, is doing an incredible amount of damage at this point. Genax on an individual level, really showing again his pedigree. This guy was in the LEC so recently. Getting such a big individual advantage allows him to take over games like this.
Yeah, I mean, this is the mid-game fight that we talked about that honestly you wanted to avoid as Alloy Bank. You do not want to be here for this because this is when Kalista is in her prime. 2 items at the point. She was in a perfect position to carry that. It just didn't feel like the right time, and they felt like maybe, oh, Fabibin went a bit too far forward, we can take it, but it just feels like the Cassante is just becoming too much of an issue. 3-0-6 here for Genax. Has a 50 CS lead as well. I mean, look, it's going to take a pretty big mistake right now from SK to get themselves anywhere but winning this game.
Now there is a Baron event. That is a drift.
That was a little bit of a drift, but they're so far behind. Have they got the damage to follow up on it? Kenway hasn't gone down just yet. Now he has. Eventually, they will trade it back. Double knockup means Fabibins will be able to stay alive. They're trying to fight just before the Cassante gets here, and they are taking this one fairly well. The Ezreal, though, gets taken down by the Demonic Embrace, and he'll be taken out. I honestly have no issue with the fight, because you have to go for something, but there's just too much money in the bank.
On the Fast and Furious EMEA drift ends in a car crash. It's going to end with SK Prime going towards the Baron. It looked so smooth for about 3 seconds, and then everything exploded. SK Prime, this is their game-winning play. If it wasn't already solved before, the one way they could have really thrown this game is at something like the Baron. It's not going to be the case. No one is alive to see this go down. You've only got that Rel plaintively walking into their own jungle. Like, look at this. This is so cool. That's so brilliant. I love this kind of stuff. But it just, the damage isn't there. You're fighting under an enemy turret. The Ezreal has to put themselves out of position to even walk up as well to get the finishing damage down. They commit so much, and they get absolutely blasted afterwards.
Yeah, and you have to go for fights like this, because even though you lose 5-2, it's better than losing your entire base and not having a chance to fight. You had to try something, because when, you know, for example, you get something, you're able to move off into, and, you know, get all those kind of things going for yourself. Then you're back in the game, but if you don't, you're just going to lose a death by 1,000 cuts. But this is just, you know, again, it's SK Prime's mid-game spike. They're huge right now, and I just don't see a world. Like, 3 items on the K'Sante. Genex is massive.
He needs, like, one of them. He needs one of them. Everything else is a luxury at this point. 4,000 individual gold advantage, hard fought, playing on the weak side of the map, taking up ganks and everything alongside it. Even Featherman, who's been caught out a couple of times, has himself 3 items as well. You're not even going to be able to 1-3-1 or side lane against these champions too, because LeBlanc is so ridiculous alone, clearing out waves and hitting turrets. You can never leave them unattended. With the Baron Buff pushing in, it feels like all of your options are just utterly disastrous.
Yeah, it does feel like it is just a matter of time now. A matter of time before they would go for it. You're going to have one last ditch engage, and that's basically it. One last stand, if you will, before this game goes in. I will say, Genex taking a fair bit of poke right now. That's going to force the rest of SK Prime to kind of back themselves away.
Throw it out there. I think he lost more health to casting his ult at high HP than the damage that came in afterwards. He doesn't have that HP now, though, importantly.
He doesn't have it, nor did he have the ult. We'll see if they can make it work. We're going to see Addy just about getting out. He's ticking down, but he doesn't go down just yet. It's a little bit of a scrappy affair, but these health bars are all falling for the blue team. It's just going to be that easy. They're going to be able to finish off everybody else. They won't lose a single member. Trips on dubs. It's a full house for SK Prime, and they're going to be able to set themselves a 2-1 on the day.
It's a winning hand for the side of SK Prime. It's a winning hand for the Prime League champions. This is the team that was so often locked in second place. And yes, they started off the day with an awkward loss, but 2 wins back-to-back give us a lot to be excited for.
Prime League not done just yet. Perfect game here for Genex as well as Lorax. Actually, quite a few perfect games there for the perfect KDAs, shall we say, as they do finally take out the Nexus in 24.5 minutes. Really, really well done there by the side of SK Prime, and honestly, that's the kind of dominance you want to be seeing.
Absolutely, because, you know, we've talked about a lot of the strength of individual regions coming into this in Prime League. They had a couple of years where things weren't working out so massive for them, not getting beyond quarterfinals. And even then, that was like UOL, who were their champions, getting towards that point, and even they couldn't make it beyond that point. Then we come to this year, and much like a couple of our other regions, we talked about PG Nats as well, the Prime League have started to come back into fruition again. 2 semi-finalists in spring. Strong performances here, at least in the other games, besides against the LFL from SK Prime. They'll need to come round in the second round robin to really make the most of that, but there's a lot to be excited for here.
Yeah, absolutely. And someone who I say is pretty happy with their performance is Genex, and we've got him on the line, I believe, in our interview. Genex, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Hello. Can you hear me?
Hello. Great. Yes, I can indeed. Thank you so much for joining us today. Obviously, congrats on the win. You had a pretty fun time on the K'Sante. And just tell me, like, we've seen it a couple of times, people coming up with ideas for counters for the K'Sante. What do you feel about the champion? How do you feel where his strengths lie?
I mean, I think this champion is like, it has actually many counters, but it's only really countable if, like, you need to be kind of better than your opponent to beat the K'Sante player. So I think K'Sante, in like a good player sense, is always strong. No matter the matchup, he can always have impact. Just because his champion kit is so, like, I wouldn't say necessarily overloaded, but it's very, very strong.
You don't want him nerfed.
I love that you just say you got to be better than him, because that kind of segues into a conversation which I'd love to have with you as well, because we know, of course, that you are one of the very best top laners in the ERLs right now. You've just come off the LEC as well. In terms of your own personal growth, what do you want to achieve in this competition, on an individual level, to prove to everyone else in Europe that you're still up there at the top of the top laners in this region?
I mean, I want to prove that I'm the best top outside of the LEC, and I think I am. I think I had a bad game today in the first game, but I'm definitely capable of beating any top laner in this tournament. So yeah, that's basically what I want to prove. And in order to prove that, I think I have to win it all. So that's my goal.
We will hold you to that. And I really hope we get to speak about that a little bit later into the competition as well. Another thing you mentioned there, which is, again, something which you need to talk about. You did lose that first game of the day. It was pretty unceremonious. Felt like laning phase really fell apart across the map for all of you. I actually want to know about this from the entirety of the team. After a loss like that, someone kind of has to rally the troops. Someone has to speak up. Is it one person who's really rallying you, or is it more of a communal effort?
I think after the game, it was unusually quiet a bit because we kind of got stomped, and we didn't expect it because usually we have like decent records against them in scrims, rather good records actually. So we were very surprised by the level of play they showed up with, and also by how we played, like that we played pretty poorly. So I think everyone just took a minute, and then we kind of gathered around as a team and realized what we could have done better in draft and in game, and just talked it out basically. And yeah, we're gonna try to focus on improving on that and then beat them next time.
Well, that is one way to bounce back from something like that. It's great to hear that you're coming together as a team. Thank you so much for joining us, and best of luck in the rest of your games.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Genax. Always great to hear from him. And again, remember, look, you heard it from a pro player. Arguably the best top laner outside of the LEC. Casante's not busted. Leave him alone.
Just be better.
Just be good. Just be good. That's just how it is. Just be good. But, I mean, look, it was kind of a pretty easy affair from it. It got a bit fun there for SK Prime at certain points, but it did feel like they did actually have a much cleaner time of it. And like you said, you know, having a much better time than comparatively against BK Rogue.
Yeah, and it did feel like, it's felt like in both of the games, really. It's quite hard to now judge that first game of the day, because if it was even laning phase and it got towards skirmishes and team fights, maybe we'd see a closer game, and you can hear from Genax there. Good record in scrims versus that team. And yes, I know it's not a great indicator, but it's something to work off. And it's better than we saw in that first game of the day compared to the two afterwards. SK Prime, when they've come out of early games with advantages, with winning lanes, they have looked so clinical about finding the fights that they need to. They've been taking fights by storm, and it feels like when they win a fight, they absolutely crush the fight to the extent that they just take over the map.
Yeah, I mean, look, the thing is that, yes, a couple of people did go down, a couple of people died in these skirmishes, but it was never the priority. It was never things like Genax. Even when they did finally get on the Kedawi, this was great. Again, I want to give mad props to Addy there. That was a great little, you know, kind of Tokyo drift.
I've seen in ages.
It was awesome.
Matter, but it's cool.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's a small moment to say cool, awesome, but then after that, the rest of the fight kind of happens. You still have a LeBlanc to deal with. You still have a disgustingly fed Cassante to deal with, and it just, the inevitable happens, and this is what happened. I mean, he nearly did more damage than anybody's seen. Like, god damn! God damn!
Weak side, by the way.
Yes!
Double damage! And Matix on the other side on that, Jackson. Of course, Matix on the other side, he's 17 years old, coming to his first EMEA Masters. There's a lot of pressure on that player and had a draft where he had to perform well. Going up against Genax, of all players, who, as you heard it from the man himself, thinks that he's the best top laner outside of the LEC. That's a good game to put something to that.
Yeah, well, hopefully he gets into the LEC very soon. But we got plenty more EMEA Masters to come after the break. We got one last game between Desire and BK Rogue.